It is a case that has baffled the police and disturbed a community. Kyron Horman disappeared from his own Oregon school after a science fair. He's been missing for almost a month. And while the investigation is intense, so is the conflict within the family searching for him. At the centre is his stepmother, Terri Horman, who dropped the child off at school that morning. Is it possible that she knows what happened to the child who disappeared?
Hey, what's up? Today I will be telling you about a little boy named Kyron Horman. If that name doesn't sound familiar, you might recognize this picture. This picture was taken of Kyron at his school science fair. He would disappear moments after this photo was taken. This is a case that I think will be solved eventually. There's one person in particular who people believe is responsible for Kyron's disappearance, but I will let you make up your own mind about that at the end of the video. So Kyron Horman was kind of born into a broken family. His father Kaine cheated on his mother Desiree with multiple women while Desiree was pregnant, including a woman named Terri Moulton, who would later become Kyron's stepmom. Terri Moulton is a former bodybuilder, a substitute teacher. She was married twice before, and she had one son named James from a previous marriage. Desiree divorced Kaine 8 months into her pregnancy. Kyron Horman was born on September 9th of 2002, but by the time he was 2, his mom Desiree developed...
Desiree was sick with severe kidney problems.
I had gotten to the point where I was in the hospital usually 3 or 4 times throughout the year.
Your kidneys were failing?
Yeah. I was so sick that I was passing out at times. Kyron would, hurt himself if I happened to have passed out.
Desiree says she went to Canada for treatment and gave Kaine temporary custody of Kyron. But when she got back, still recovering and drowning in medical bills, they decided together that Kyron would be best off staying with his dad.
She now says she really regrets this. So at this time, Terri was just Kaine's girlfriend, and she was a little bit reluctant to take Kyron in. She already had a 9-year-old son, and she was just not so sure about it. But for Kaine, it was a no-brainer. Kyron was his son, and he needed a home, so Kaine was happy to take him in. Kaine and Terri got married in 2007 in Kauai. Kaine was actually a computer engineer at Intel.
Incredible processing power. From the blazing speeds of our devices to blazing trails within AI, Intel builds chips that are at the heart of nearly everything.
And he worked really long hours, and according to Terri, he thought it was his job to provide money for the family, and it was Terry's job to look after the house and the children. Terri had a master's degree. She wanted to do like school administration, so she might have had some resentment over this. Either way, Terri raised Kyron as if he was her own, and she was definitely a mother figure to him.
Did Kyron think of you as another mom?
I'm mom. He referred to me as mom, and he would call Desiree Medford mom.
In 2008, Kaine and Terri Horman had a daughter of their own named Kiara. Terri had some postpartum depression. She was withdrawn and angry. Let's fast forward to late May of 2010. This would be a week before Kyron would go missing. Terri tells one of Kyron's teachers that he would not be in school the following Friday because he had a doctor's appointment. This wasn't totally true because the doctor's appointment was actually the following Friday, but it could be an honest mistake or not. Terri would later say that the reason for the doctor's appointment was because Kyron was acting strange. He would walk into a room and just stare blankly. He couldn't seem to remember things, and Terri even claimed...
I'd walk into his room, and there were things he was doing to himself that would tell me that there's something wrong, that somebody may be touching him improperly.
So let's fast forward to June 4th. I'm going to try to give you as much detail as possible because there's a very short window of time that something could have happened to Kyron. Kyron usually took the bus to school, but That day, Terry drove him to school and she brought her daughter Kiara along. That day was actually the school science fair at Skyline Elementary, and Kyron did a project on red-eyed tree frogs that he was really proud of. Since it was a science fair, the doors to the school weren't locked and there was no security like there would normally be. So anyone could pretty much come in and come out. Classes actually didn't start till 10 a.m. that day, but Terry says she arrived to the school at about 8:15 a.m. She said she stayed there for a little bit for the science fair. She took the infamous photo of Kyron.
When you see that picture now, what goes through your mind?
Just to take him home. Just go home.
Terry says she left the school at about 8:45.
I walked out the main doors by the buses.
That was the last time you saw him.
Yeah.
Kyron never made it to his first class and was marked absent, but no one notified the family because Terry had told the teacher that Kyron would be at a doctor's appointment that day. She went to a Fred Meyer to pick up a prescription for her baby daughter who had an ear infection.
Andrea Leckie ran into Terri Horman here at the Fred Meyer along Walker Road the day Kyron disappeared. Andrea says Terry told her she had left the science fair at Skyline School.
I was just, being polite and making chat with her and talking about her daughter not feeling well because she was not feeling well the day before, and I knew that. And
Andrea and Terry only knew each other from the 24-hour fitness, where Andrea worked as a service manager and Terry worked out frequently. Their interactions at the gym were always very brief, so their interaction in Fred Meyer was actually the longest conversation they had ever had. But it was important enough for the DA and grand jury to ask questions.
broad, just kind of like, what was she doing? Did she seem different? What was she wearing? Just wanted to know if there was anything out of the ordinary, and from what I could tell, not necessarily, no.
But looking back now, Andrea says one thing does stand out to her.
I think the only thing that seemed odd about it, perhaps, is that we were just passing each other by, and she, in a few seconds, with her daughter being sick in her arms, made it a point to show me the photo.
Apparently, she went to the wrong Fred Meyer, so she had to go to a different one to get the prescription. After that, she went to a dry cleaner and a craft store. So we can pretty much account for Terry's timeline until about 10:15. At about that time, things start to get a little hazy. Terry says she spent some time driving along back roads.
Parked for a little while, for about a half hour, and I rocked her to sleep and got her to crash for a little bit.
So why pull off the side of the road?
She works best at the time, works best to be rocked to sleep.
Terry says that once Kiara was asleep, she began to drive around to keep her napping.
Terry may or may not have made a phone call at 10:40 a.m. because her cell phone pinged on Sauvie Island.
Highway 30 runs parallel to Sauvie Island. I was on Highway 30.
You didn't go.
I was never on Sauvie Island, never.
Terry was next seen at a gym at 11:39. She dropped Kiara at the gym's daycare and then went to work out. Terry arrived home at 12:40, and an hour later she uploaded a bunch of pictures of Kyron at the science fair to her Facebook page. She also emailed one of Kyron's teachers asking if she could pick up his science fair stuff later that day. At 2, Kaine arrived home, planning to work the rest of the day at home. At 3:30, Kaine, Terry, and Kiara all went to the bus stop to meet Kyron because they had plans to go and get ice cream, but the bus driver said that Kyron was not on the bus, and he said he would call the school secretary to check and see what was going on.
Talking to the secretary, she says, he's not here, and your heart just sinks. I mean, you're just like, how could he not be there?
After the school secretary discovered that Kyron was absent, she called 911 at 3:46, and the search for Kyron began.
Kyron! Search crews combed the area around Skyline Elementary looking for Kyron Horman.
So after hearing what was going on, bio mom Desiree and her new husband Tony drove up to Portland.
Search teams started combing the area. Kyron's mother, Desiree, and her husband, Tony, raced up to Portland from their home in Medford, Oregon. When they heard the awful news, they had called Kyron's stepmother, Terri Horman, just before jumping in the car.
I had told her I'm coming up there. And she said, you are? And she seemed surprised at that, which I thought was strange. I said, of course I am. I'll be there in, 4.5 hours.
And together with Terri and Kaine, they all held a joint press conference.
Kyron's parents, all four, appeared in public for the first time. Members of the family stood side by side. Look closely, and you can see some interesting body language between Kyron's mother, Desiree, on the left in the sweater, and his stepmother, Terri. She put her arm around you at one point.
It's a little strange for your ex-husband's new wife to be hugging you and caressing you. It just seemed strange to me.
All four parents took a lie detector test and all of them passed. Except for Terri, that is. She failed one polygraph test and the second one she walked out on. Terri says,
Why do you think you failed lie detector tests?
Well, partially because of my hearing. I'm deaf in my left ear.
Why would being deaf in one ear affect a lie detector test?
Because I'm reading your lips as we're speaking. Also, I hadn't slept. I hadn't slept in days.
Did you at any time lie to police?
No.
A lot of people think if you flunk not one but two lie detector tests that there's got to be something going on.
Well, I think that they already had settled on me to be their patsy.
I told you before in other videos that lie detectors are not real science and they can't be used in court. But the fact that Terri failed two of them made the police really zoom in on her.
FBI agent George Houston, he said she didn't show the kind of emotions he'd expect from a mom who'd lost a child she loved.
At some point in going down that mental checklist on someone that you've lost, there is going to be an emotional impact somewhere in that list that's going to break you down. This did not happen.
The media also found some of Terri's old bodybuilding photos, and they also found out she had a 2005 DUI arrest with her son in the car. So all of this was just not making her look good. Friends also say that Kaine and Terri's marriage was not as good as it seemed. Kaine apparently really didn't get along with Terri's son, and he kicked him out a few months before Kyron disappeared. Most disturbing, she blamed Kyron for the problems in her marriage and said that she hated him. Things got really crazy though 3 weeks after Kyron disappeared. Kaine was called into the police station alone and was told an undercover operation was underway at his house because Terri had hired someone to kill him.
Hello, I'm Tracy Barrett.
And I'm Joe Donlin. First at 6, the Kyron Horman investigation takes another turn. Now a reliable source tells News Channel 8 officers were prepared to arrest stepmom Terri Horman for hiring a hitman to kill her husband.
More than a month after 7-year-old Kyron Horman disappeared, the focus remains on his stepmother, Terri Horman. Detectives aren't saying that Terri is a person of interest or suspect in the case, but a reliable source tells News Channel 8 that police were prepared to arrest Terri for plotting to kill her husband, Kaine. Terri offered to pay a landscaper for the murder, saying Kaine had hurt her emotionally, and that an undercover detective accompanied the landscaper to Terri's home on June 26th. The source goes on to say that if Terri had implicated herself in trying to arrange Kaine's murder, police would have arrested her. The landscaper was wearing a wire, but sources say Terri suspected something was up and cut the conversation short.
Terri's gardener, Rodolfo Sanchez. Rodolfo Sanchez really couldn't speak English, and Terri couldn't speak Spanish very well. So whether this actually happened is a little bit iffy. It's possible that Sanchez was just cooperating because he was under the threat of deportation. Either way, Kaine divorced Terri and got a restraining order. In the divorce filings, Kaine said that cops told him that Terri was involved in Kyron's disappearance, and just 2 days after he filed the restraining order, Terri tried to kidnap Kiara from her daycare. So because of all this, Kaine was granted sole custody of Kiara.
I've lost 2 children in 3 weeks. 2 children.
Speaking of hitmen, this was not the first time that Terri was involved in something like this. In 1990, Terri was 20 and she was dating an 18-year-old named Sean Ray. Sean says that the young couple was on a date in the park eating Chinese food when a strange man popped out of the bushes with a gun. Terri shouted, "He's here for you." The man walked away though, and Sean broke up with Terri soon after. In case you weren't suspicious of Terri yet, cops claim that Terri was sexting one of Kaine's friends, Michael Cook.
Kaine and Terri live right up the street from me.
Cook is an old high school friend of Kaine's. They recently reconnected.
Just a month after Kyron disappeared.
While the world's been out looking for Kyron, allegedly his stepmother has been busy with other things.
Dozens of emails, including graphic photographs, to find out, according to the court documents, that Michael Cook was having an affair with Terri Horman.
Court papers allege Terri and Michael Cook exchanged sexually explicit text messages and pictures. Cook has admitted to KGW that he sexted with Terri, but denied having sex with her.
You're sexting with
Sure.
some random guy. It doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. But like I said, I'm not going to make an excuse for it. I'm going to own up to it.
Something else that points to Terry's possible involvement is her friend Dee Spicer, who Terri had known for years from the gym. On the day that Kyron disappeared, Dee was doing some gardening work at someone's house in Portland, and the homeowner said that Dee suddenly walked off the job at 11:30 a.m. and then returned at 1. So obviously police wanted to talk to Dee about where she was during this time, but Dee very quickly got lawyers and refused to talk about anything. She also thought that police might be listening in on her calls with Terri, so she bought both Terri and herself burner phones to talk on.
Paid cell phones are playing in the case. Multiple sources tell K2 News in the days after Kyron Horman moved out, Terri and two friends stayed in communication using such phones. At least one of them was purchased by Dee Spicer, another by a second friend from an electronics store inside the Lloyd Center Mall. The friend admits to me she used a fake name to buy the phone. She says they were simply trying to have some privacy as they tried to help Terri find an attorney and felt their conversations were being monitored.
A witness would come forward saying that they saw someone standing outside of a white pickup truck on the bus route to Skyline Elementary on the day Kyron disappeared. Two other witnesses would say that they saw two adults in the white pickup truck. Terri drove a white pickup truck. In June of 2012, Desiree filed a civil suit against Terri Horman, claiming that she was responsible for Kyron's disappearance.
The time has come for Terri to take responsibility for what she has done and to tell me and my family where Kyron is and how he got there.
In a deposition for the civil suit, Dee Spicer refused to answer any questions about the day Kyron disappeared or her communications with Terri. She pleaded the fifth on everything. A year later, Desiree would drop the civil suit against Terri because there were concerns that it would interfere with the police investigation.
On June 4th last year, I filed a civil case against Terri Horman for her role and responsibility in the disappearance of my son, Kyron Horman. Kyron is still missing to this day. It has now been over 3 years. Terri continues to not cooperate with law enforcement and the investigation in any way. In order for my lawyers to move forward with the case at this point, it would be necessary for them to seek access to the police criminal investigation file. My lawyers have advised me that the Oregon Public Records Disclosure Law does not provide the release of ongoing police investigation files, and I do not want anything that might compromise the investigation. Because my civil case cannot move forward without the police files, it is with great disappointment that I make this difficult decision. I don't want anything to compromise the ongoing investigation for Kyron.
Terri has tried to move on with her life. She went by her maiden name, Terri Moulton, for a little bit, and she got a job as a caregiver, but once the media found out, she quit.
Not being able to get a job.
You're unemployable.
Absolutely.
Terri tried to get her name legally changed to Claire Sullivan, which is actually a character in a mystery novel.
Negative attention concerning the Kyron Horman case, and therefore you want to change your name.
Correct.
Is that a fair paraphrase?
Mm-hmm. I need to be employed so I can support my daughter.
But a judge refused this request.
As long as this matter remains unsolved, unresolved, and until more information is given by you about that, it does not seem to be in the public's interest to change your name.
Terri remarried in 2018 to a man named Jesus Vasquez Martinez. She now lives in Santa Rosa, California. Terri has been arrested twice in California, once for driving a stolen vehicle and another time for stealing a gun from a roommate. In a 2020 book, several witnesses say that they saw Terri leaving with Kyron from school on the day that he disappeared. So, with Kyron still missing today and everything pointing towards Terri, what does she think happened?
He was taken from school.
So you think a stranger came in and abducted him?
Yes. And there's pedophiles in the area. Definitely.
Terri says that on the day she disappeared, she was approached by a sketchy man who asked her for directions to the nearest school. And what do you know? She said that the sketchy man was driving a white pickup truck. 10 years later, Kyron Horman is still missing. Desiree says that they have narrowed their search.
Now I can tell you that we've narrowed it down to less than 100 acres. So it's a huge amount of progress with all the searches that we've done, whether it's law enforcement or private. We've been able to get to a point where at least I feel better. I don't look at all those rolling hills and think we're looking, you know, as far as the eye can see. We're not. We're looking in key areas, and we've narrowed it down.
Where have you narrowed it to?
I can't say that.
She says that she expects the case to be solved, and
But Desiree Young, Kyron's mother, says she is sure of her guilt.
I'm certain. I'm confident I would stake my life on it.
So yeah, let me know what you think happened in the comment section. Do you think that Terri was involved, or do you think it was someone else?
Thank you all so much for watching. Stay safe, and I will see you very soon. Bye.